Of all of our hearts together find their way into the heart of God this morning. Amen. There's a lot of broken hearts this morning. You all may not know this, but a woman named Rachel Held Evans died yesterday after a freak illness. She was 37. And a progressive Christian author and a woman of valor for many of us, especially progressive Christian women leaders who loved her for her brave and funny and beautiful writing. She leaves a husband and 2 kids, 1 and 3. And I quote her this morning because her words deserve to live long upon the earth. Amen. I didn't even know her, but I cried all day yesterday. She says, "This is what God's kingdom is like. A bunch of outcasts and oddballs gathered at a table. Not because they are rich or worthy or good, but because they are hungry. Because they said yes. And there's always room for more." We are prone to believe that we are not worthy to be God's disciples because we don't believe ourselves to be good and faithful enough. We forget that all we ever needed was to be hungry and say yes. So today I have a confessional story because you know that I'm a sinner. I am no saint. I am only human and doing the best that I can. And if we're going to be a confessing church, it's my job to go first. Amen? That's what I think ministry is, right? Going first. Come on along with me. So a couple years ago, I was more depressed than I usually am. Depression is not a new phenomenon for me and not something that I want any of you to worry about because I have struggled with a mild depression for most of my adult life. It's just part of who I am, and I know how to manage it. My parents are here this morning. Don't worry about me. I'm fine. My depression was dark enough to truly scare me only once, and that was 8 years ago during my divorce. I found my way into darkness so deep that I wasn't sure that I was going to be able to come out, but I did, and I'm here because God takes, because God takes old broken things and makes them new. Sometimes he names them Andy and Isaac. And the First Church in Sterling. Today is my 5-year call anniversary to this church. Yes. God takes old broken things and makes them new. But here's what depression looks like for me most days. My average everyday nuisance of a clinical mental health disorder, right? It's been manifested since childhood as this inner jerk in my brain. Do you all have one of those? Who tells me that I'm a terrible person. Despite self-awareness, years of therapy, psychology school, divinity school, many brilliant books by Rachel Held Evans, great friends, plenty of Zoloft, a loving husband and family and congregation and lots of ice cream and pedicures and prayer, I haven't been able to fully evict that jerk in my head. So 2 years ago, I knew I needed to go back to therapy to get some help for this. Just because it was winter and my life consisted of couch and work and back to couch, right? I've been in therapy many times in my life, but hadn't found one here in central Massachusetts yet, and I found a therapist who was really quite good, and I liked him enough to keep going to my appointments. I bet you're wondering when the confession comes, right? Okay, so here it is. I'm not confessing that I go to therapy, because therapy is good, and that's nothing to be ashamed of, amen? Okay, yes. Okay, so this is the confession, though. One day in the darkness of winter, I forgot that I had a therapy appointment. For no reason, because I wasn't doing anything. I was just home on my beloved couch, vegging out. But I realized I had forgotten about halfway through my appointment. Have any of you ever done that before? Yeah. And I was frozen, too embarrassed to call my therapist, because this was the second time I had forgotten, in the last 2 months. And my therapist called me right after our therapy appointment was supposed to be over, and he left me a message. Because I saw the caller ID, I didn't answer. "Where are you?" he said. "I thought we had an appointment today. Call me back." And I felt so embarrassed that I hadn't called him to begin with that I didn't call him back. If you call him and tell him that you just forgot, he'll think you're a flaky, irresponsible idiot who is undeserving of your job, the jerk in my brain said, right? You guys know this story, don't you? Okay, no. So Stephanie is like, yes, no. So I put it off, right? Then a week went by, and another week went by, and I was so ashamed that it took me so long to call my therapist back that I didn't call him back. I'll call him next week, I thought. And then a month went by, and another month. "You're so irresponsible. You hate it when people do this to you, Robin," the jerk in my brain said. The jerk in my brain often tells me to ghost people because that's easier than healing. Do you know what I mean when I say ghost people? Just sort of disappear. Maybe I'll write him a letter, I thought. I mean, he's used to depressed and flaky people, and I'm sure he doesn't take it personally. I know this. I used to be a therapist, you all. But then a year went by. And I was too ashamed to write him a letter. A year later, the jerk in my brain told me that I didn't deserve a good therapist anyway, since I couldn't even keep an appointment or be responsible enough to call him and tell him why I disappeared. My depression made me particularly forgetful and unable to move my couch or make a phone call or do anything besides go to work. And my paralysis made me mad at myself, right? So I got stuck in a shame spiral that kept me from my own healing. That's a loop that many of us get stuck in. That's a spiral many of us get stuck in. Often when you have disappeared from church, you have a story like that for me. That jerk that takes up residence in our brain telling us we are worthless and it's too late sometimes has a louder voice than God. And so we deny our discipleship and stay home. I swear, though, if we listen hard enough, we might be able to hear, "Follow me. I will lay nothing heavy or ill-fitting on you. Come away with me and you'll recover your life. You don't have to be perfect. You are loved. You deserve healing. Just show up." When we deny our discipleship, we don't need God's forgiveness. That's already guaranteed. We already have that. We need to forgive ourselves. So this week, in the final resurrection appearance, we encounter Peter, a man who needs to forgive himself, right? In case you forgot, Peter is the disciple who denies his discipleship, right? In fact, as predicted by Jesus, he denies knowing Jesus 3 times after Jesus' arrest. Peter betrayed his friend, his Lord. He ghosted because he was scared. And I'm sure the shame of that made mourning Jesus' death that much worse. You know what I mean? He told everyone you would deny him, the shaming jerk in Peter's brain declared. You are not worthy to follow him. In this scene, Peter decides that it's time to push the regret aside, though, and return to his life. So he gets off his couch to go to work. And what does Peter do? What do the disciples do? What are they before Jesus asks them to follow? What are they? Fishermen, right? So he sets out in the dark of night to fish. We'll go with you, the disciples say. They too have to go back to the everydayness of their lives after all, right? So they do what we all do after someone dies, just the have-tos, the taxes, the laundry, the 9 to 5. It doesn't matter that the world will literally never be the same. It still goes on. So the disciples get into the boat, cast their net into the water, and they come up empty. They can still fish, but without their beloved friends, all is empty. Just after daybreak, the risen Jesus appears on the beach. How many of us find Jesus on the beach? Amen. He says to them, "Children, you have no fish, have you? Cast your net on the other side, and you will find some." And the disciples do what this strange man says and catch so much fish that then they can't even carry the nets to the shore. And Peter recognizes Jesus right away. It is the Lord. He puts his clothes back on because he's naked to swim to shore. He doesn't strip away all pretense. He doesn't make himself completely vulnerable, naked, and shameless, right? But he just gets in that water and swims. He will show up disarmed and ready, or as disarmed and ready as he can. Come and have breakfast, Jesus says to his friends. It's the first communion after Jesus rises. Rachel Held Evans said, "My Jewish friends like to joke that you can sum up nearly every Jewish holiday with, 'They tried to kill us, we won, let's eat.'" So communion is that kind of Jewish holiday, right? It's a weekly celebration of just that. He took bread and he gave it to them. He took fish and he gave it to them, bagels and lox. And now they all recognize him. Love is always recognized at the table and the taste of food, right? Just like we can taste the love baked into the pie made from our grandmother's apple pie recipe long after she dies, the disciples can taste and see that he is always with them and that his love lives on in abundance. They tried to kill us, we won, let's eat. The story doesn't end at the table, though. After breakfast, Jesus says to poor, broken-hearted Peter, "Do you love me?" He asks him 3 times. Peter starts to get exasperated, right? But he asks him 3 times the amount of times that Peter denied Jesus. "Of course I love you, Lord. You can have my heart if you don't mind broken things." There's only one response then, Jesus says. "If you love me, feed my lambs, tend my sheep. Follow me. Stretch out your hands. Go where you do not want to go. Beloved, this is the gospel. If you love God, forgive yourself. Then feed, tend, follow, stretch out your hands, go where you do not want to go. If you love God, give God your heart, because God doesn't mind broken things. In fact, God makes all things new, even banged up, bruised, lovable you. If you love God, come out of the shame spiral the jerk in your brain talked you into. Get naked and swim to shore. Amen. Believe God when God tells you who you are. If you love God, don't just commune with creation alone on the beach. God is there, and the ocean is beautiful, but it's not enough to heal. We need each other. So show up in relationship, show up in human community, even the ones who don't pay you to be there. Show up at your therapist's office. Go where you do not want to go. Stretch out your hands. If you love God, feed one another. At the dinner table, at the communion table, your presence is enough and the table is already set. So just show up, regardless if you brought anything to the potluck, regardless if your best friend died or your favorite pastor is going on sabbatical, regardless of if you're angry or brokenhearted or depressed. Don't ghost because it's easier to ghost. And if you do ghost, it's never too late to come home. You are already forgiven, so forgive yourself and show up for your life. If you love God, follow God to the places where the forgotten people are, to your knees where you serve from, to the cross, because we are all marching toward Calvary, and to the resurrection, because love always rises up. I want to share these words with you from Glennon Doyle, who wrote this about her friend Rachel Held Evans yesterday. I want to share them with you because they sound familiar to all of us who have lost a loved one and a loved one who relentlessly told us that we were more than our brokenness. Whenever I want to scare myself, she says, I consider what would happen to the world if Rachel Held Evans stopped writing. Doyle said this yesterday. She said that this was the first sentence she wrote in the foreword of one of Rachel's many books. Rachel died today, she said. Rachel was a friend to the hurting, the questioning, the outcast, the underdog, and the forgotten. I have never seen no one match her courage and relentless commitment to use her pen and heart and might to fight for the least of these within the religious establishment. She refused to abandon us. She was relentlessly brave, and she always won for us. She always came out on top because in brilliance she had no peers. No one could outsmart her or outbrave her or outlast her. She was our warrior. We needed her. Without her, Glennon said, I feel scared. In the world of people claiming to speak for Jesus, Rachel was the closest I've ever known. Without Rachel, we are going to need to become as brave and beautiful as she believed us to be. We are going to have to become leaders now that our leader is gone. Beloved, I share this with you because this is the message of the gospel. This is the message of the resurrection. This is what Jesus was trying to tell the disciples. I know you're scared. If you love me, become as brave and beautiful as I believe you to be. Show up shameless for your lives. You are going to have to become leaders now that your leader is gone. Be a friend to the hurting, the questioning, the outcast, the underdog, and the forgotten. Be relentlessly brave. Be a warrior for love. All you have to be is hungry. All you have to do is say yes. Amen.